They were attracted to human women. Now, that's not me saying that. That's in the Book of Enoch.
And some of these guys wanted to have sex with us, and they did it.
The knowledge imparted by the watchers leads to increased sinfulness and corruption among humanity, according to the Book of Enoch.
If Enoch would have stand before the throne of the Almighty God, God would certainly never have stand up and shake hand to the humans.
You'll find everything I'm talking about is right in this book, the Book of Enoch, whose book was omitted by the Council of Nicaea. Why? They praise Enoch for being so holy and so good to God that he was taken away and straight to heaven. He didn't have to die. He went straight into heaven and he never came back. They tell you that this guy was just, a real good guy, and he did everything that God wanted, and he was without sin, and he was so incredible that, hey, just take him straight to heaven. Just bypass the whole death process. Just go ahead and take him to heaven. And so that's the story that you get, but that's not the actual true story. It's quite interesting that Enoch is highly, highly, highly revered in the biblical text. However, his own book was left out of the Bible. Now, why do you think that is? Why do you think Enoch's text was left out of the canonized Bible? Well, I'll tell you why. Because it's talking about these people behind me. That's why. It's an ancient Jewish religious text traditionally ascribed to Enoch, the great-grandfather of Noah. Now, who is Noah? We know now, because I've been reading the Epic of Gilgamesh, that Noah is actually Ziusudra, okay? That's his real name, Ziusudra, before it was converted to the name of Noah in more recent texts. His original name is Ziusudra, or even in some, depending on which version of the Epic of Gilgamesh, Akkadian or Babylonian, it could be Utnapishtim, okay? Ziusudra is the most commonly known name, but Enoch is the great-grandfather of the person that was actually given the instructions on how to build a ship to be saved from the flood. Now, this ship that he actually built, we discover in the Sumerian tablets, is not a gigantic boat like what they have been preaching to you in Sunday school. He was given the instructions, and how do I know this? Well, the tablet is actually in the British Museum. He was given the instructions on how to build a gigantic round disc submersible, or maybe it flew. I don't know. We don't know. Nobody knows. And it was cut up into sections like a pie on the inside. And he was told to put his local flora and fauna and his local livestock in that disc. He never built a gigantic ship. Not once did he build a ship. That is false information. Not once did 2 parakeets and 2 lions and 2 deer and 2 cockroaches and 2 fleas and 2 ticks and all this come on the boat. Didn't happen, okay? I'm just telling you right now, it did not happen. He was literally told to get his local flora and fauna and his local livestock and take on this disc that was cut up into sections like a pie on the inside, but it was a sealed disc, like a saucer. That's what he was in. And we know this for an absolute fact now. There's no way to get around it. There's absolutely no way to get around it. So Enoch is the great-grandfather. Now, what's important here is we're aligning a man who has directly interacted with these advanced beings. Now we know his own descendant also interacted with these advanced beings, as he was given the actual instructions on how to build this from Enki, one of these Anunnaki people. Enki saved him and his family's life by teaching him how to build this particular disc-shaped floating device, whatever you want to call it, right? This DNA bank, if maybe it was that. But we see a direct connection between Enoch and Ziusudra, who's actually now called Noah in more modern texts, because the Bible is New Age information, not Old Age, it's New Age. So it's interesting that connection, that lineage is there. 2 people, same bloodline, both being directly engaged by these beings. The descent of the watchers, they descended from the sky. When we hear this in the biblical text or the Enoch text, what are we being told here? We're being told that these people, and I do mean people, came from the sky down. They descended from the sky down to the earth. And they were called the Watchers. They were the Watchers. They would watch over humanity. And in some ways, they were forbidden to engage humanity. Some of them were forbidden to actually engage. In other words, to directly interact or interfere. It was against the rules. They actually had something called a prime directive, the same kind of prime directive. You see that they utilize that same term in Star Trek. In the Star Trek TV series, since it came out in 1960 all the way till now, they have a prime directive in which they cannot directly engage or interact with any civilization that's pre-warp. If that civilization is pre-warp and they're going to actually go down to the surface of that planet, then they have to pretend like they're part of that culture. They have to pretend like they fit in, like they're not really aliens or from space. And they can't alter or change or give them any technology in any way, shape, or form. It's forbidden, literally forbidden. Well, they got that information from the ancient tablets. And the Watchers descended to Earth because they were attracted to human women. Now, that's not me saying that. That's in the Book of Enoch. That's the ancestors saying this. They were attracted to human women. And this group of angels was led by chiefs such as Zemaziah and Azazel. Zemaziah and Azazel were the two chiefs or leaders of this particular crew of these Watchers. And they decided, you know what? These girls look pretty damn good. We're going to take some human wives. Now, it's interesting that when you read the Enuma Elish or the Epic of Atrahasis, you discover these beings in there. They call them the Igigi. And these Igigi people are these Anunnaki workers. They're not slaves, but they're the working class. In other words, if I own a construction company, I'm the boss. Then I have a master architect, and underneath that, I have a foreman. And then underneath the foreman, I have workers who go out and actually do the labor to build the product or the house. You see, it's a structure, it's a system. Well, these Igigi, they said the same exact thing in the Epic of Atrahasis. They said, we want to get some of these human women. We don't have no women over here. They were working, according to them, they were working on Mars. And they were complaining about the conditions. And they said, you're working us like we're slaves, and we're not slaves. And not to mention, we want to take some of these women back with us. So in two different texts from two different time periods, we find the same story. We found not the same story, but we found a similarity, I should say, a similarity in which these advanced beings, they want to get at these women.
Enoch is in the Bible just mentioned with two phrases. It says Enoch was the seventh patriarch before the great flood, and Enoch was the first human who disappeared in a fiery chariot from the earth. That's all what you read in the Bible. So how do we know something about Enoch? Some 160 years ago, a British man came to Ethiopia, and he went into a convent. He stood there for 30 years in a convent. He learned the language perfectly, the local language. And in the old library, he found a book, the Book of Enoch. The Book of Enoch was written down in the first person. I version, I did, an eyewitness story. He knew the name of Enoch from the Bible. He knew Enoch was the one who disappeared as first one in the fiery chariot. And now a Book of Enoch. So he translated finally the Book of Enoch from this Ethiopian language into English. And in the year 1900, a German professor translated finally Enoch from the English language into German language. Now, if you want to look for the Book of Enoch, you cannot just go to the library and say, I want the Book of Enoch. At least in German language, the Book of Enoch is part of thick volumes of scientific literature. The apocryphic texts of the Old Testament. In volume 2, you find 126 pages of the Book of Enoch. Why is Enoch so fascinating? He begins the story, he says, I was 12 years old. The community in my village, we all wanted to sleep. And then we hear the noise in the sky. And something was coming down from the sky. Then two beings in glittering clothes came near to us. We were all afraid and we all fell to the ground, even Enoch. And of a sudden, somebody took him up and put him on his legs. and said to him, "Don't be afraid, human. Don't be afraid. We won't harm you." Now here we have the first questions. Why should extraterrestrials speak the language of Enoch? Some thousands of years, a group of extraterrestrials surrounded the planet. Some groups of them came to Earth. They behaved themselves as today's ethnologists would do. They studied some of the humans. Today's ethnologists, or ethnologists 100 years in the past, they went to the upper Amazon River, or they went to the upper Nile, and there were complete different cultures up there, the natives. None of the cultures speak German, or English, or Spanish, or French. It was never a problem for the ethnologists to learn the language of the nature in a short time. Language was never a problem. So when I suggest extraterrestrials, they behave themselves like ethnologists, it was no problem for them to observe a group and to learn the language. So for me, it's normal that the extraterrestrials uses the language of Enoch and says, "Don't be afraid, human. We won't harm you." Then they ask him, the 12-year-old boy, "If you wish, you can come with us. We will teach you." Enoch has courage. He said, yes. They took these two strange, they took Enoch with them. One of them says, "Human, you stink terribly." So Enoch had to put away all his clothes until he was completely naked. And then they put him into the water. There must have been a river there, or a creek. And when he comes out of the waters, one of the two gives him a cream and orders him to put this cream all over his body, including his face and his hairs. Enoch does so, and then he smells on his skin. And he say, "Well, I smelled like ambrosia and different perfumes, which we have no translation of it." He's still naked, the boy. One of them gives them a cloth, something glittering like they have. They teach him how to put the trousers on. And Enoch looks down on his own body and says, "Now look, I looked like one of them." Then they go up there. Of course, Enoch has no word of spaceship. He sees up on the earth something like gigantic crystals. Doors open and close automatically. He understands nothing. He comes into different rooms. Finally, he comes to a round central room, and there is a throne, and on the throne there is the highest. And the highest stands up and shakes hand with the young Enoch from Earth. What I just told you, ladies and gentlemen, is fact in the Book of Enoch, but not the way I told it to you. Why not? Enoch was translated for the first time roughly 150 years ago. The professors at that time who made these translations were brilliant personalities. Everyone was not a liar. It was not the question of hiding something. But in their time, the spirit of time was completely different. They knew nothing about flying machines. Not to speak about spacecraft, space vehicles, they all believed in honesty. It must have to do something with God. So the translation of Enoch was made in a religious, psychological way. What I just explained you before in my words, in the real Book of Enoch, it sounds like this. 2 angels came down from heaven. They put Enoch into the water. They baptized him before the great flood, forget it. They say, "You stink." In reality, they give him a cream. He was simply disinfected. That was all. Then he received something which is a similar garment as these extraterrestrials have. That's why he looks as him. I look like them. Of course, in the religion tradition, in the old tradition, they believe that now he went up to heaven. In reality, he was just in a smaller spacecraft, we would call it space shuttle, up to the mother spaceship. Then he comes in the big round room where the throne is. The religious translation says, and now Enoch is standing for the throne of the Almighty God. But even the translators, some 150 years ago, they realized that something must be wrong here. If Enoch would have stand before the throne of the Almighty God, God would certainly never have stand up and shake hand to the humans. Forget it. It was all misunderstanding, simply because the time was different when these translations were made. In the meantime, we have the possibility to translate these things from a modern point of view, and it all makes sense. Enoch is, by the way, the only one who gives the names. I know, ladies and gentlemen, the names of these extraterrestrials. Well, I know them from Enoch. Enoch quotes them all. These are the names of their leaders. The name of the first is Jekun. He is the one who seduced the children of men, etc. 36 names. I said they behave themselves like ethnologists. Now, Enoch realizes that up there they were of different opinions. And some of the group went to Earth, and on Earth they found beautiful humans, mostly male, but not only. And some of these guys wanted to have sex with us. And they did it, they had sex. Now the question comes up, why should extraterrestrials have the same sexual apparatus as we? I came back to this point, why this happened. So Enoch describes exactly what happened. You can read it in the Book of Enoch. But when the sons of the heavens saw that the daughters of men were fair, they admired them and desired to mate with them. And they said to each other, we will take them as wives. Altogether they were 200, which descended upon Mount Hermon in the days of Jared. Jared is the father of Enoch. Jared is the 6th patriarch before the great flood. Now you say, fallen angels or sons of heaven had sex with humans? This must be a wish, imagination. I suggest you just read the Bible. First book of Moses, chapter 6, verse 1. When the humans began to multiply and have daughters, the sons of God saw that they were fair, and they took them as their wives. Which sons of God? There were no angels. All this was simply extraterrestrials.
And so they began families. Then they started doing something again that was against the prime directive. They started teaching forbidden knowledge. The Book of Enoch says that. They started teaching them forbidden knowledge. And the fallen angels impart various types of knowledge and skills that were previously unknown to mankind, which had a profound and often detrimental impact on human societies. So what are we talking about? We're talking about the fact that these beings violated another law and began to engage mankind and give us the forbidden knowledge. And why was it forbidden? It was forbidden because why? It was forbidden because this information that they were giving to humans was going to expedite our advancement technologically. And when you advance your technological prowess, all of a sudden, there's room for extreme detriment to that civilization. Why? The reason why it's room for extreme detriment is literally because when you take a civilization that isn't maturing enough spiritually and give them advanced technology, turn them into a technocratic civilization, they can potentially destroy themselves. And that's where we are right now. We're in a situation where we're on a precipice. We're on a line that we can go this way or that way. We're teeter-tottering. We are in a position right now to destroy ourselves. In less than 100 years, we went from a horse, buggy, and carriage to creating intercontinental ballistic missiles to creating the Voyager 1 and Voyager 2 craft that have now gone out into interstellar space. We've done incredible things in less than 100 years. What did Azazel begin to teach the humans? He teaches men to make swords. First thing he does, let me teach you how to cut somebody up. Let me teach you how to chop somebody to pieces. We didn't have metallurgy. We didn't know how to make swords and steel. We didn't know how to work metals. We had no idea until Azazel taught us. He taught us how to smoke metal and all that and steel and iron and how to make a sword that won't break and that can slice and dice over and over and over again. Azazel did that. He teaches men how to make swords, knives, shields, and breastplates. We didn't have anything. It didn't exist yet. Azazel taught us that. One of these Anunnaki people, and I do mean people, person, humanoid. Azazel also teaches women the art of beautification, including the use of makeup and jewelry, which is suggested to have incited further sin. Azazel, that's how we learn how to make weapons. It didn't come from the Japanese and the Chinese and No, it all came from one source. Azazel is the first person to teach us how to work metals and make swords and knives. First person, and breastplates and shields. First person. Then what happened? Semjaza, he instructs on the enchantments of root cuttings, essentially teaching sorcery and herbalism. So he taught sorcery and herbalism. He taught people how to use the herbs for either curing or for either trying to utilize those herbs in correlation with sorcery to create a particular outcome. A lot of that stuff is still being used today. And we don't want to admit that's what we're doing, but that's exactly what we're doing. We're trying to create sorcery, burning incense, right? Smudging and all of that. That comes from Semjaza. Amaros teaches resolving of enchantments. So he's teaching how to resolve enchantments. And then you have Barakel teaches astrology. So the first time we were taught anything about astrology and how it applies to human behavior, that came from Barakel. Then Kokabel taught the knowledge of constellations. He gave some real knowledge on constellations, star systems, orbital periods, star alignments. All that came from Kokabel. Then you have Ezekiel. He teaches about the knowledge of the clouds and meteorology. So now they're getting information on the clouds, stratus clouds, cirrus clouds, predicting weather patterns, understanding barometric pressure. All of that comes from this guy, Ezekiel. And then you have Arakiel. He teaches about the signs of the earth, which might be interpreted as geology, right? Or geomancy. So he's teaching geology, stones. He's teaching you how to understand layers going down, how many years back in time that goes, how to detect an area where there may be flowing rivers underneath the land, where there may be dangerous argon gases that you don't want to dig there or create something under that area. All these things, tectonic plate movements and volcanic activity, and all this information is coming from this guy, Arakiel. Then you have Shamsiel. He teaches about the signs of the sun, like the solar behavior and the solar cycles. So he's teaching about the solar maximum, the solar minimum, CMEs, coronal mass ejections. He's teaching all this information to the people. So they have a full understanding of the solar minimum, solar maximums, and how that affects global warming and global cooling, how some of these CMEs can literally affect our magnetosphere. Then you have Sariel. He instructs on the course of the moon, which encompasses lunar cycles and possibly lunar astrology. Sariel's teaching this. So the whole lunar cycle, all that's being taught by Sariel. And not only that, but because it's the lunar astrology, he's teaching about the effects of the lunar gravitational forces on human minds, human consciousness, and how it affects our own behaviors. Still to this day right now, I don't know if you knew this, but during the full moon, which is totally predictable, do you know that police stations ramp up and have more policemen on staff that night? And the emergency room at hospitals have more staff that night on a full moon? Do you know why? Because on full moons, there's going to be more activity with crime and with injuries, either stemming from crime or other, maybe more car accidents or whatever, on the night of full moon. Full moons directly affect human consciousness. So Sariel's teaching and instructing on the moon. And so you have the consequences of all these teachings that these beings did. I don't call them angels because they're not angels. They're not angels in my book. The knowledge imparted by the watchers leads to increased sinfulness and corruption among humanity, according to the Book of Enoch. The text portrays this dissemination of forbidden knowledge as one of the key factors leading to the moral decay and the eventual decision of God to bring about the great flood in the form of a divine retribution. The punishment to the watchers is, as the result of their actions, the watchers are judged by the archangels and are subjected to severe punishments. They are bound and cast into the abyss, a form of imprisonment and torment, as a penalty for their disobedience and negative impact on humanity. So the humans got to die in the flood, but these people, they don't die. They just get kind of bound into some kind of a chamber where they can't get out. And they're not killed, they're put into some kind of prison. If you really go into the text, you discover something very interesting, that Enoch wasn't taken by God. He was taken by people, and he wasn't just taken once, he was taken more than once. You're taught in Bible study that he was taken to heaven on a chariot, never to return again. He was taken straight to heaven. He bypassed death, not according to the Book of Enoch, where he actually has a conversation with the beings that are going to take him on this trip to teach him knowledge, which is approved by the head god, Anu. This teaching is approved, and this trip is actually approved, and it's given a set day that they're going to leave on this trip. He even gets his affairs in order and has his sons prepared for the day that he's going to leave. In the Book of Enoch, the narrative of Enoch being taken into the sky or the heavens is one of the key elements of the text. The ascension is portrayed as an extraordinary event where Enoch is granted divine visions and insights, setting the stage for the detailed revelations that follow in the book. In his ascension to heaven, Enoch's ascension is described across several passages in the Book of Enoch. He is taken up into the heavens multiple times, each providing different experiences and revelations. In other words, different things he's being taught, different knowledge that he's being given on different trips. Multiple, not even double, but multiple means more than two. In his initial ascension, Enoch describes how he was taken up into the heavens on the clouds, and the wind in the sky bore him aloft. Well, that sounds quite a bit like flying in some type of a vessel. The ascension is often seen in his initial introduction into the celestial realms, and during this time, he visits various places in the heavens and earth, including the places where the heavenly bodies, stars, sun, and moon, are regulated. Oh, he's in outer space, guys. One of the earliest accounts of a planned alien abduction. Visions of the heavens. As Enoch ascends, he is shown the treasures of the stars and the thunder. Among other secretive and sacred places of the heavens, he witnessed the workings of the natural world from a divine perspective. So he's looking at the earth from atop, and he describes it as a giant ball. Understanding the operation of the cosmos, the weather patterns, and other natural phenomena from above, looking down on the planet. He's seeing the clouds from the other side. This isn't a story about some heavenly father, a sky daddy with a magic wand, whisking away a good human into heaven. It's a story of advanced beings with advanced technology that's capable of space travel, taking a man from the earth into space and teaching him things. This is why the Book of Enoch is not in the Bible. Then you have the revelation of secrets. Throughout his heavenly journey, Enoch is also shown secrets that are not known to other humans. He's given forbidden knowledge. These include ultimate judgments of the angels and humans, hidden paths of the stars. He's given star maps and the storehouses of life and rain, which are meant to explain both cosmic and earthly operations from a divine standpoint. He's given the information and knowledge how to predict weather patterns on earth. That is what the Book of Enoch is all about. That's what the Book of Enoch is all about. You'll find everything I'm talking about is right in this book, the Book of Enoch, one of the most revered people in the biblical text, whose book was omitted by the Council of Nicaea. Why? We don't want to tell them about these aliens taking people into space and teaching them how to kill each other, make weapons and all of this, and how they lusted after our women. No. Let's keep that on the outside. Just keep it on the outside. That's exactly why.